Okay. Good evening, everyone. Um, I'm Jill Wilkinson, and I am the Vice President of the PA-OCN Chamber of Commerce, your host for the evening. We have present two candidates, Amanda Laughlin, the New Democratic Party, and she is the incumbent, and Al McLaughlin of the PC Manitoba for the riding of the uh, oh boy, I'm going to slaughter this, Kameesak in northern Manitoba, representing our area as a member of the Legislative Assembly. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 5, traditional ancestral lands for many Indigenous peoples. Uh, the First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and the people across Canada share a history and a deep connection with this land. I am grateful for the shared wisdom, and I am dedicated for moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. The PA-OCN Chamber of Commerce currently polled for questions relevant to our riding. We received lots of feedback in which we had to come up with a process that would be fair to stick to the available time frame. I would like to thank UCN and, of course, the staff, Monty Cashel and Grant Nemeth, for volunteering themselves and donating this class facility. I appreciate their expertise. Good luck to all the candidates, and advance voting runs for 8 days, Saturday, September 23rd until Saturday, September 30th. And I think the hours are from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and I'm not sure about our Sunday here, but I think there's a time slot for that. Voters can vote at any poll in their electoral division on Election Day, October 3rd. And I'll ask Monty to come, and he's the moderator.
Thank you, Jill. Welcome to University College of the North. My name is Monty Cashel, and we're glad you could join us today for this MLA forum on our campus in the PA. We're also welcoming those joining us virtually, as this event will be streamed by the PA-OCN Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to take a few moments to explain what will happen tonight. We'll first hear opening remarks from the candidates. A timer will be visible to the speakers for time cues at the back. I will also give a 1-minute and a 30-second audio cue to each speaker. Candidates will be given specific times to speak. Please finish your points before the time runs out. It's okay if a speaker finishes before the time runs out. After opening remarks, we'll move to the question period. A list of submitted questions were shared with the candidates before the forum. We'll randomly ask some of those questions. There will also be a time for the audience physically in attendance to ask questions. The audience will be given an opportunity to ask a general question to be answered, and the question has to be a topic that wasn't already covered. As tonight's moderator, I'll try to use my discretion throughout the evening in respect to time so we stay on track. It's now time to hear the opening remarks from our candidates. And first, Amanda Laughlin, you have 3 minutes to make your opening remarks.
Tanse, everyone. My opening remarks are as is. I'm a proud member from a Pas-Kameesak Cree Nation, and basically since the age of 15, I've seen my late father in this position, and he absolutely taught me that how to be humble in this position, and it's probably the most unglamorous job. And I feel that an Indigenous woman in this position, I feel that I'm representative of who we are in Northern Manitoba. As a former employee of UCN, I was a representative workforce coordinator, and that's what we wanted to have UCN demonstrate and represent of who we are here in Manitoba. And that's who I think we should have as a member who currently sits and fighting for her seat back at the ledge. We need a representative in there who truly knows the hardships of what a Northern Manitoba goes through. We need a member in there who knows what it is to be like to be medevaced out to Winnipeg with their children with mental health issues. We need a member who's actually been medevaced out to for other healthcare issues. And we need a member with compassion and true life experience that every single person in our constituency has went through and will go through. We need a member who will truly understand the narrative that happens right now in the chamber that I sit in. It does not match what we want as Northern Manitobans. Sitting there as your member, hearing the narrative from the PC government, it's very heartless. It's not us. In fact, it's very disheartening. And that is why I will work hard and go door to door to make sure that we elect an NDP government, because we need people in there who will make heartfelt decisions with people who actually lived the hard life and the have-nots. As a foster parent, as a mother, as an aunt, as a mother with children with mental health and with the struggles, CFS, I've seen it all. Addictions, I've seen it all. And we need somebody with a heart and compassion who doesn't mind helping people who are very disadvantaged. That's who we need in the Manitoba Legislative Building. Egusa.
And now we'll hear opening remarks from Alan McLaughlin.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda, for that. I'm going to do things a little bit differently because when you're on the campaign trail, you seem to forget a few things. So first of all, I just want to give thanks. I want to give thanks to the PA Chamber of Commerce, PA UCN Chamber of Commerce, and to UCN for putting this event on. It's great for us to get out here and to speak. I want to give thanks to all of you who attended here tonight, and of course everyone that's out in the audience online. Thanks to our two sitting at the back there, who I've known for many years. You're always saying that, Susie. Yeah, it's him. It's not, it's the two of you, so thanks a lot. And I also want to thank everybody in the communities that I visited. My father-in-law used to say, when I came here almost 50 years ago, he was still wet behind the ears. And I used to kind of laugh at that and sometimes get annoyed about that. But it's true that I was. I was 18 years old, and I came to Northern Manitoba, and every one of you sitting in this room and out there put a little piece of you into me. So I am very thankful for that, very thankful, because you made me the person to stand up here, and I appreciate that. You made me ready to be up here and be your MLA. I also want to thank my team that's been working hard. Sometimes we forget about the people who work behind. And they have been working very, very hard to get this election, get us through this election. And finally, I want to thank my family. We sometimes forget about our families. And our two sons, Andy and Peter, their wives, Aaron and Ashley, our 5 grandchildren. They've always been behind me on everything that I've wanted to do. It wasn't hard easy being a cop's son going through high school, but they were there, they stood behind us, and of course, I want to thank my rock over here, Joanne. She has some of the crazy ideas that I've had, changing jobs. She's always been there for me. And it is her birthday yesterday, so give her a big round of applause for her birthday. But she has supported me. And we'll get into the politicking as the debate goes on, but I wanted to take that opportunity to thank all these people and all of you for giving me the opportunity to stand up here and be your representative. Thank you.
Let the fun begin. It's the question period. We have 9 envelopes with questions related to the economy, education, small business, Indigenous issues, taxation, affordable housing, childcare, addiction, crime, and homelessness. I'll pick someone from the audience, and they're going to pick a random envelope, and I'll read the question in the envelope. Both candidates will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Let's get started. This deals with the economy and jobs. How do you and your party intend to facilitate and expand global trade opportunities for the Port of Churchill, Manitoba, as well as Arctic Gateway Hudson Bay Rail to boost the province's economic growth and competitiveness? We're going to hop back and forth, so Alan, I'll have you answer first. The next question, Amanda will answer first.
Our party has invested a lot of money into the railway. $75 million, I believe, was the figure that they've put in. They truly believe in the Port of Churchill and the rail line. On top of that, we have worked very hard, and we finally got announced some money that was thrown in, $90 million to be exact, into Highway 283. And for those of you who are a bit long in the tooth, you'll remember that that was promised to us back when I was mayor of the PA. The NDP government back at that time, under with Steve Ashton as the highways minister, promised that 283 would be built, and it wasn't built under the NDP. It was finally announced this year under the Conservative government. I'm happy to say Bill Ward sits on the committee with myself and a number of other people, and Jim Burscheid. We're very excited about having 283 announced. That will bring grain from Saskatchewan, from the grain belt to the prairies, into the PA to the transportation hub, and then up to Churchill and out to the rest of the world. So we, as a progressive conservative government, a re-elected progressive conservative government, are fully committed to Churchill and to the Bay Line. Thank you.
Amanda? Yep, it's good.
Hello? Okay. Well, ever since I was young, when my dad was MLA, this has been on the table for a long time. Saskatchewan has met its end of the... They have met us in the middle, if you will. We need to meet them halfway as well. When you think about, like, we already have a good grassroots push towards this, such as the hardworking people with the Gateway Group. They have done a tremendous job in keeping this on the table, and they're made with local people, the members of this board. They've been doing a good job in advocating and recruiting, getting letters from support, so we can get money from Canada and from the province. And they've also been doing a good job in educating us as to why we need that 283 fixed and more transferable, if you will, because we have lumber, seed, things that can be shipped quicker, and also make use of the Port of Churchill as well. I've had many conversations with Mr. Burscheid as to why that's been important. In fact, he was the one who started educating me on this, and I have attended meetings too with our grassroots level with the Arctic Gateway Group, with the Gateway Keewatin Group, I should say.
30 seconds.
And that's where we are getting a good start. You know, this group should be given credit with all the work they have done to address international global trade. This little group, that's who should be thanked, you know, and their little steps, they're going to affect us internationally when it comes to trade and grow our economy as well. Economy comes with jobs. Egwisa.
This question deals with taxation. Out of these proposed taxations, PST, payroll tax, land transfer, and carbon tax, which two will your party address first to promote tax competitiveness in Manitoba? And will this strategy be adequate to attract businesses, investments, and talent to the province while maintaining a balanced budget? And Amanda, I'll have you answer first.
You know what? I need you to repeat that question again.
Sure. Out of these proposed taxations, PST, payroll tax, land transfer, and carbon tax, which two will your party address first to promote tax competitiveness in Manitoba? And will this strategy be adequate to attract businesses, investments, and talent to the province while maintaining a balanced budget?
Okay. I was just discussing this with my 15-year-old before my 18-year-old before I came here about carbon tax. During the campaign, I was sitting with folks and we started talking about NDP's plan regarding gas tax. And it was significant, the numbers that were shared, even numbers that my daughter even figured out in her own head, about getting rid of the gas tax for temporarily so it could be addressed to fix what majorly needs to be fixed, which is our healthcare system. And I had the percentages here as to what we're talking about. But anyway, I believe the carbon tax, there's 14 cents per liter of that carbon tax. And overall, it feeds $340 million per year to Manitoba, that gas tax. So imagine if that, pardon me?
1 minute.
Oh, and imagine $340 million, temporarily feeding what needs to be fixed, education and healthcare. That could be a temporary solution. It'd be, not everyone drives a car, but everyone is affected by health and education. So that's an idea that we're looking at, is to temporarily just look at that one carbon tax and hopefully feed it where it needs most fixing, which is our healthcare and our education.
Can I pick 3 out of the 4? Because that's what our party's already decided on. So the PC party has been fighting the carbon tax, the federal carbon tax, for months and months and months. And that carbon tax was brought in by the Liberals, of course, supported by the federal NDP. So we've been fighting to get rid of that carbon tax. We've already announced that we're going to get rid of the land transfer tax. So that will be huge for first-time home buyers. And also the payroll tax, we've already said that we're going to get rid of that in 8 years. And that was an NDP tax that was increased, that was a tax that was increased by the NDP. So we've already talked about reducing 3 out of the 4 taxes.
This question deals with childcare. Daycares are often only open during school hours. Even though there's been an increase in grants for childcare centers and a boost in staff wages, the shortage of spaces and workers persists. What do you propose should be addressed? And Alan.
Yeah, we've worked with the federal Liberals on this. They brought out the $10 daycare, of course. We've also just announced an increase in daycares at UCN, daycare spaces at UCN, which is very, very important. I'm also heartened to see the MMF, who are putting in a daycare center over on Bell. I think that's really important that other organizations and governments are going into daycare spaces. I think that's huge, and we have to continue that. As to having daycare spaces, over the summertime, that's certainly up to the organization that runs those daycares. I would definitely support that because we see lots of moms and dads who are working. They don't stop working in the summertime, and they need daycare. So that's something that I would very be supportive of.
Thank you. Daycare. As a mother, I don't think I would have grew in my career if I didn't have daycare. Needed daycare since I started having children. Needed daycare while I was working here at UCN. And because of that, mothers and parents such as I, we're feeding the economy by having childcare spaces because we can go to school, we can go to work, we can have better lives. Education makes healthy communities. And the NDP is committed to have daycares open too on holidays as well, because some of us have to work on holidays. Some of us have to work on weekends. So we're planning to expand those hours so we can further capture the other workforce who need those services so they too can grow as a family. They too can serve as role models. And also too, our daycare workers need raises.
1 minute.
And I can't imagine, you know, like when I would drop off my children and pick them up, I would specifically thank them every single day. Thank you for looking after my children so I could attend work, have an income, pay my bills. And even that family who's running the daycare, you know, Margaret Ross, others, you know,
30.
them too, they provide a very extremely important service to every one of us here in this room. Darcy, I've seen you were recently had a baby, you know, same thing. So daycares feed the economy so we can work and go to school.
This question deals with healthcare. What specific strategies does your party plan have to improve accessibility to healthcare? And Amanda, you'd be up.
Hello? Well, like everyone knows, we're all watching the news. Healthcare is the #1 issue. Even more so, especially after the pandemic that we went through, which, by the way, as your MLA, I was with you every day during the pandemic, leading with you, relaying information to very concerned constituents as well, which was a job that I held like I was Mother Bear or something, answering our scared constituents' answers. And what we want to do is fix the hole at the bottom of the boat. We're not able to retain our doctors and nurses. They're all floating out. We need to start fixing reinforcements, retention for our healthcare workers, training, promising them a life and work balance.
1 minute.
Because right now, our healthcare workers are overworked. No wonder there's conflict between patient and healthcare worker. We also want to have a clear long-term goal with healthcare, which means eliminating the top heavy and an overall leadership with a more emotional intelligence.
30.
Right now, we just have top heavy. We need to start thinking grassroots with the actual grassroots healthcare workers. Instead of listening to people who have no idea what we go through in the waiting room at the Pas Hospital. They're making decisions blindly. We want to eliminate that. So there's 3 things: retention, reinforcements, and long-term goals. We want to fix that hole at the bottom of the boat.
Healthcare, I'll agree with Amanda on that. That's #1 issue when I talk to people is healthcare. And that's why we, the Progressive Conservative Party and the government, has announced some major investments in northern Manitoba. When I was mayor of the Pas, we worked on the clinic. And I was promised 4 times that we were getting a clinic in the Pas. 4 times by the Premier of the day. We did not get that clinic, period. The clinic was just announced this year, before the summer, $39 million, and that's going to improve the retention of people, of doctors, of professionals, of nurses, of mental health people in our community. Professionals want to be in a professional location when they're working, and that's what we're going to get with our new clinic. And it will also revitalize our downtown, which is huge. We've also just announced today money to set up a fund which will just do that, the enhancement, the bringing people in and keeping them here, the professionals here. That is so important. And $10 million of that is going to go into the north. But we also, as a community, we have to do things to help people feel like they want to be here. And Helga and I had talked about that some time ago, that we're getting professionals in, but they don't feel like part of our community. So it's incumbent upon all of us, when we see doctors, nurses, and professional people to come in, that we make them feel at home. But our government and our party is totally committed to healthcare. We took a report that was commissioned by the NDP, and we've put it into play, and we're really happy with the results that we're getting.
Everybody picks from the middle of the stack. This is about Indigenous issues. What strategies does your party have in place to meet the needs of Manitoba's Indigenous population within the framework of economic growth and labor policies? How will you engage and collaborate with Indigenous communities to foster their participation in shaping the province's economic development and strengthening partnerships between government and Indigenous businesses?
Our party's already started. When you talk about prosperity for communities, you need to talk about economics. And our party was the first party to sign agreements with Indigenous communities. So when you take a look at lumber, so royalty agreements have been signed with a lot of the First Nations communities in the north and in the riding. I think that's huge, because it just shows to them that they are part of the province and the solution, and we are willing to work with everyone as a government. We've also recently signed an agreement up in Marcel Colombe, up in Lynn Lake, with the mines up there. So again, that shows that the government is willing to work with Indigenous communities. I'm heartened to see on a lot of the boards that we sit on, when you talk about Gateway Kuwaitan, that we have Indigenous representatives. And I'm also heartened to see the partnerships that we've already forged with Indigenous representatives on the railway. That is huge, absolutely huge, because we can't talk about reconciliation unless we talk about economic reconciliation and using the resources that are in the north for the communities of the north. So our party has already started on that route, and we will certainly continue to do that in the future.
For the record, I must put on record that the Paul Clinic project was developed by the NDP in 2016, and that project was absolutely kicked off the table by Pallister when he got into power in 2016. So you're welcome. We gave you the plans. Thank you for dusting it off and having our dreams come true, where we can have healthcare services closer to home. Also, too, the PCs don't have a good record with Indigenous issues. As an Indigenous woman, I've seen firsthand Pallister's inappropriate remarks just about every day in the chamber about Indigenous people. I've seen inappropriate remarks just about every day about this phantom consultation process with Indigenous people. I've seen every day, as a residential school intergenerational survivor, I've seen the Minister of Indigenous Relations, they even had to throw that in. And I'm not being mean, this is the truth. It was disheartening to see the minister say that residential schools was a good thing. We need to follow the recommendations for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That is what we need to do. We need to have respectful, meaningful consultations, not a meeting with the chief. That's not meaningful consultation. You need to do it with the whole community. And we also need to have proper representation, which we currently have right now. Thank goodness the North is represented by 4 NDP MLAs. And thank goodness we currently have 5 Indigenous MLAs to correct the people who sit across from us. Egosa.
We've been given more time, so instead of just 5, we can continue on with some of the other questions. I'm just going to go with what's ever on top until we get to the time that we need to. This question relates to small businesses. What strategies do you propose to address the impact of inflation, specifically for minimum wage earners, and how do you plan to improve the minimum wage framework to ensure it keeps pace with the rising cost of living? And Amanda, you'd go first on this one.
Well, affordability, inflation, holy smokes, watching the news every day. I just watched this man who's an electrician in Ottawa, 80% of his income goes to rent, and 20% is left whatever, and he has children, right? While the PCs were in government, they raised the renters' tax there, make it even more unaffordable for folks to choose between a roof over their head or food. And we're seeing a trend now where people are picking a tent and eat. And we also have to look at affordable housing as well. In every community that I've been to, all of our Manitoba housing is boarded up for years. How come they're not being fixed? How come they're not allowing a single mom and her 3 kids to get out of her mom's home where there's 2 other families living in?
1 minute.
How come she can't and her children have the same respect and have their own roof over their head that will improve their lives significantly? And with this renters hike, tax increase, it's not fair, especially when it comes from people who have little empathy for the consequences for these rising prices in order to live. And it's disheartening to see that every day in Winnipeg and every day here. And I'm personally affected by it as well, by family members and whatnot. And that's what we need to do, is to stop thinking about, oh, sorry, Egosa.
I think the question was on small business, and that is absolutely shocking. As a small business owner, I see the effects of it all the time. The Liberal carbon tax, supported by the NDP in Ottawa, is affecting everything that we do. Everything that we do. As you know, we make birch syrup, and right from the sugar that we buy to the bottles to the shipping is all affected by the carbon tax. And for them to say that we get back more than what we put in is absolutely wrong, because we don't. As a small business owner, we need to stop the carbon tax, and we are fighting the federal government on that. It is very important that we take a look. You know, the NDP, the federal NDP, and I hate to talk about federal politics and provincial politics, but when you talk about things like inflation, which affects us all, the federal government has control over that, and that they've been supported by the federal NDP. They talk about the margins that on groceries, and it's 5%. And if you're running a business and you've got a 5% margin, you're not doing very well. If I ran my business at a 5% margin, I would shut the doors tomorrow. So we really need to take a look at what those inputs are, for instance, the carbon tax and how the effect that it has, and we need to stop those inputs. That's the only way that we're going to stop inflation, and that's the only way that we're going to work on the effects of inflation on our people.
Next question is about affordable housing. This has a bit of a setup. A key issue here is affordable housing. Condo, apartment, 55-plus housing plex with amenities for seniors and affordable first-time homeowners, like being able to get a mortgage on a mobile home without requiring a 30% down payment. The cost to build condoplex delivers a price tag per condo around $250,000 plus, which means a condo is the same price as most homes in our area. Here's the question. How will your party support the organizations to be better equipped with resources and programs to ensure there are sufficient housing opportunities for the future? Alan.
That's a tough one. We worked very hard on seniors housing back in the day, and there was a real problem when you talk about the cost of materials and building up in the north. I've talked to a number of developers, and I've asked them, I said, why don't you build? Why don't you build in the north? And they've told me that the return on investment is not there, and that's why they don't build in the north. I can't tell them that they're wrong because I'm not in that business, but I'm very heartened to see projects like the MMF has started over on Bell Avenue, where they're putting in seniors housing and they're putting in duplexes for families. And I think that's really where we need to grasp is partnerships with organizations, whether that be the MMF or whether that be OCN or any other organization that wants to come and build in our communities, no matter where in the riding that may be. I think partnerships are huge. I know the town has got a bylaw where they'll give a little bit of kickback on the taxes, and that's huge for people. But we really need to look at those partnerships and how can that help to alleviate the housing shortage in our area.
I agree with Al. That is a tough question. Like I said, you know, just about every community that I go into, Manitoba housing is boarded up. People are not wanting to pay their rent in these Manitoba housing units because there's a hole where they sit and use the washroom. And, you know, you should see the conditions of some of these housing. And as an MLA, I was really excited to attend the announcement with MMF Housing. And just like what Al said, you know, that's the only way we can get through this is by collaboration. Look what happened with MMF. There was 3 groups collaborating together to make a dream come true for senior 55 plus housing, a daycare. Now it's incredible. So we need to see that more often happen. I've seen collaborations happen here and then fall apart. And it's disheartening to hear that nobody wants to build up north because there's no, you know, there's no real money to be made. And that's what I mean by saying us northerners, we're people that deal with a lot of have-nots. So by hearing people do not want to build here, It's very disheartening. So the only way we can do this is through collaboration. I've seen collaborations of other organizations through communities and other projects that I've seen happen. So that's the only way it can happen, and along with grassroots too, people having a say in what they want to hear. And what I really want to know is, why is our Manitoba housing houses not being fixed? There's lots on Traeger, lots in Moose Lake, lots in Cormorant, and nobody's moving to fix them so we can have decent housing for our folks who need it. Thank you.
The topic of addictions, crime, and homelessness. Considering the link between substance abuse and various criminal activities and homelessness, what strategies does your party intend to employ to confront the growing issue of heightened substance consumption? Amanda?
This subject is very personal to me. On August 13th, my sister, 35 years old, died of an opiate overdose in Winnipeg alone. I was informed September 3rd. Her body was unclaimed for all that time. My only regret is I wish I could have helped her more, but I have her 3 children. What needs to be done is to capture these people early. My sister's life went downward when she reached 13. My mom and her were having a bad time. Marla decided to call CFS. Gone. CFS took her away. We never seen her again. That left from foster home to foster home. We fought hard to get her back. So it was root problems, right? CFS, poverty, mental health. Things that I wish I could have done for my sister. But addictions is hard. They don't think of you. They just think of their next fix. The only time we heard from my sister when she was sober and in jail. Our people need mental health supports. Our people here need addictions supports. So we don't have any more deaths. So we don't have any more young mothers dying alone with a needle in their arm. Our families deserve more than that. Northern Manitoba deserves a recovery center. So we have no more deaths like this anymore. So we can love them and give them the care that they truly need. Egwisa.
But you're exactly right. We really need to take a look at the root causes. We talked today, when I was talking to some people about crime, we can't just figure that an addict is going to go in for a 28-day session and then come out and be that changed person. That's not going to happen. As a former police officer, I've seen that time and time and time again and dealt with people. That's not going to work. We need some wraparound supports for everyone. If you go in for 28 days, if you go in for 6 weeks, if you go in for 12 weeks, then you need those wraparound supports. You can't go back into the community without those wraparound supports. And that's why I'm very heartened for 2 things. I was at the Friendship Center talking to the executive director, Doug, and he told me about a story about a person that they had worked with. And he was on the street, this person. They got him off the street. They got him into a house, into an apartment. But they didn't just leave him there. They didn't just say, there's your house, and we're not going to have anything to do with you. They went and met with him continually. And they gave him that support. And that person has been sober and clean for 5 years. And I think that's huge. That's what we need to do. And I'm very impressed. Today, we just announced $10 million for Quest which is an Indigenous-led treatment center in Winnipeg. We're very excited about that, that's something that's going to help people by people that they represent. So we're already doing that. We've got $150 million on addiction. I got the red light already, but $150 million.
This question is on education. Aligning post-secondary education with industry needs can help support economic growth and prosperity. How do you plan to foster stronger collaboration between educational institutions and industries in Manitoba to ensure that graduates are equipped with the skills and knowledge needed for the job market? You're good.
As we talk to a room where half the room is from UCN, so I think that's the word that we have to use is UCN. UCN is doing an excellent job on meeting with industry, finding out the needs of industry, finding out the needs of community, and then meeting those needs with training. And our government has committed to fund training programs. Again, I was talking to a woman today, and we talked about training and how to keep kids busy and get them engaged and interested in the trades. And it was really neat because I referred back to the day in Moose Lake when everybody was working. There was people up at Moose Lake Loggers that everybody was working there, or they were fishing, or they had small farms. Everybody was working. And then all of a sudden they weren't. And we're not sure why. She couldn't tell me why that stopped. But I think that's important, the work that UCN's doing. I also think that there's a role in elementary and secondary school for kids that, when our son graduated, I'm going to say there's 100 kids that graduated. Out of those 100 kids, 2 were going into trades. And I think that's wrong. I said to my wife, I said, where's our plumbers? Where's our electricians? Where's our carpenters? We need those people to go into trades. And I think that's where UCN can form a partnership with high schools, and Frontier Collegiate is doing an excellent job up in Cranberry Portage on introducing trades into the schools. So I think, again, we talk about collaborations. I think it's important that there's those collaborations, and UCN has to lead the way.
What's post-secondary? Okay. Al is right. We are in University College of the North, something that my late father had a huge dealing with, going from a community college to a university. And that is why the library outside bears his name. It's very fitting that the library is named after him because he always wanted to help with education, and there's a place, educational resource to help. So, with UCN, can you repeat the question again?
There we go. How do you plan to foster stronger collaboration between educational institutions and industries?
Okay, as the MLA debating in the chamber, when it came to education debates, we found out that U of M got a huge increase in their funding. Then we found out that Brandon University got a huge increase, and U of W, huge. And UCN, we got the crumbs of the crumbs. I think just a 10% increase in our budget. So that's the first thing that's got to be done, is to increase the funding for this important, prestigious school that we have here in Manitoba that's built to specifically address those concerns, to build our tradespeople, to build our daycare workers, to build our EAs and teachers and nurses. That's what we want to do. This place needs way more respect, needs way more money, because we're doing a lot for Northern Manitoba. So we deserve that respect. We deserve more funding. UCN, our community, our students. Ego sa.
This is the last question, and then we're going to take questions from the audience if there are any. How will you, as the MLA representative for the Pas-Kameesak area, advocate for the constituents encountering problems within their area or having problems dealing with government departments, agencies, etc.? People often refer to their MLA for assistance. How will you be our champion for key long-term issues? Here are some examples. Helping to foster Indigenous communities, their participation in shaping the province's economic development, and strengthening partnerships between the government and Indigenous business. Highway 283, Gateway Q8 and Corridor Incorporated started in 1950 and has been lobbying with governments for 70 years. We've been advocating for a new hospital for 25 years. We have the oldest hospital in the province. What are you prepared to do to bring these issues to completion and realization? Amanda?
I think it was a couple of weeks ago that we had a meeting with the new CEO for the Regional Health Authority. And we had Helga in that position before. And I just want to thank you. As an MLA, you helped me with a lot of information. And that's the trust you got to build. A lot of civil servants don't want to talk to politicians because we may throw them underneath the bus, but I don't do that. So I honor that relationship we had. Just like how I'm trying to establish a relationship now with the new CEO. And we had a great meeting in regards to him getting engaged with, especially with the Indigenous population and what our needs are. And another way to be a successful MLA is good staff. Jessica Luce, you have been God sent to me. That's how you are successful. You're not a good MLA unless you have good, excellent staff. And how we do it, we listen to people. We come to our office, go to their homes, go to their communities, and we follow up with emails to the minister. Emails are quick and easy. I don't like dealing with letterheads and pageantry writing. Just straight to the point emails, which have worked. Because of a straight to the point email, we were able to help a woman get her sight back. Cataract. Surgery after surgery. She was bumped off of an emergency flight. So things like that. You have to be a strong advocate with strong staff behind you. And you got to have the patience, the empathy, and the heart to do this job. Even if you can't do anything, just to listen is good enough for our people sometimes.
Is it okay if I just say ditto? Is that all right? I think that those are important points. One thing that our team has already talked about is the fact that we wanted our office in the downtown area of the Pas, someplace that's very visible. I think it's important that people feel that they have a storefront that they can come to, and where our campaign office, if I get to be MLA, that's going to be my constituency office in the downtown core so that people feel comfortable. I had a woman from Island Lake come up to my office today and said, "Do you talk to the other guys?" And I went, "What do you mean?" And she says, "Well, the other candidates, do you talk to them?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Well, tell Michael Birch I love him." And she gave me a big hug and away she went. And it was really neat. It was only because we had that storefront there. But it's very important to have a presence in the community, someplace that's accessible. The other thing that's important, I agree with Amanda, is staff. We need to have really good staff in our office. And I was very disheartened when I went to a couple communities and the principal said to me, "Well, you know, we're doing this project, but we need money for canoes, and we need money for traps, and we need money to put these land-based programs on." And I said, "Well, why didn't you apply for the culture, sports, and arts in the community grant?" And she said, "What?" And I went, "Why didn't you apply for this grant?" She says, "I knew nothing about it." And I said, "Well, it would have fallen right in there. All your programs would have fallen in there and you would have gotten money." But she knew nothing about it. And that's one thing that my staff, I've already said, if I do get in as MLA, or when I get in as MLA, let's talk positive, is that my staff will know every grant that's being put out there, and we'll transmit that knowledge to the communities so that they're aware, so that they can apply for those dollars.
That wraps up our question period, and now we're going to turn to the audience. If anybody has a question, raise your hand. I'll run over with the microphone, and if not, we would go to closing remarks. Anybody have a question?
Can I state some facts first? Sure. Good day. My question is on northern transportation, air transportation. We know the Tories cut it when they first formed government and done away with Manitoba Air and privatized it. Part of the problem with privatized air ambulance is that it went to corporations that is headed by an investment firm by a former Tory premier. Their mission is to make money. The other part of the problem is it's monopoly in Manitoba. All the airlines, Perimeter, Calm Air, they're all owned by the same investment firm. So they put profit over patient care. Time after time, patients have been bumped and waited 4 to 5, 6 days to get an air ambulance for medical services out to Winnipeg. What is your plans to bring back Manitoba Air Ambulance and take it out of the hands of private corporate profits?
All right. Thanks, Gord, for that. In 2017, I had a heart attack. I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and my blood pressure was just off the chart. And I said, geez, there's something wrong. So I waited for a little while, and I took my blood pressure again, and my blood pressure was still off the chart. And I said to myself, well, I'm going in for a meeting, so I'll just go in a little bit early, and I won't bother my wife, which is something that she's been reminding me every day of that I should have. And I went into the hospital, and I said, you know, I just don't feel right. And they said, well, we'll check you out. So there wasn't anybody in the hospital, so they checked me out. And then another doctor came and checked me out. And I saw 5 doctors that morning, and they said, you've had a heart attack. And I went, oh, well, where's the chest pain and all? Well, that's just, heart attacks are different in everyone. And then I was flown out. My wife came in, she was flown out with me. And we went to Winnipeg, and I had a stent put in. And then we were flown back. And there was no issue whatsoever. So to answer your question, Gord, we will probably never bring back Manitoba Air Services. There's no plans to do that. But I can tell you that Mississippi Air Services that flew me out did an excellent job, and I would hate to see them go. So thank you very much for Mississippi Air Services.
Your last statement was very disheartening that you'll never bring it back, because the day after it was privatized, we had a man from OCN by the name of Gordon who suffered a heart attack at 10 a.m., rushed to the ER, and no medevac. The medevac didn't come until 10 p.m., 12 hours later. And during that time, his family called me at the office on my cell phone, and I went to go talk to them. The ER doctor was absolutely stunned. He said, in all my career, I have never had to wait for a plane for a heart attack victim. He ended up dying that night in Winnipeg after he was flown out, after we made many phone calls and sent many emails asking what the heck. And the ER doctor was so stunned by it, he was absolutely comfortable telling me, a politician, what the problem was, and he wanted it to be made public. And I've had many other constituents as well call my office where their husbands have had heart attacks and have been sitting at the Paul Hospital for days, waiting for a plane to take them, to the point where the wives were saying, heck with this, I'll drive my husband myself. That's not acceptable. It's very disheartening to hear these stories of people who are just trying to get their loved ones the care they needed, the pain management that they need, that they cannot get here. Instead, we're stuck here waiting for a privatized, waiting for somebody, crossing our fingers, they can get our loved ones or myself to get health care that we desperately need. So universal health care is a fundamental right that we all have, that we all need. And with the PCs, that's disappearing. We need a
Hi, thank you. It's Andre Murphy with, I'm the mayor of the town of The Pas. So I have just a quick question. There's been a lot of announcements lately regarding mining in northern Manitoba. And soon that's going to create a lot of other challenges and create a lot of jobs. So I guess I would just be interested in what your government will do to support that growing economy.
mining. Once again, the first thing I would do when it comes to mining is to figure out who's going to be affected by this project, who's going to be affected, good and a bad way. We have to recognize our Indigenous peoples' treaty and Aboriginal rights and traditional lands first. There's got to be true consultation when it comes to mining. There's got to be true partnership when resources are taken out of our traditional lands. The surrounding First Nation communities should have some at it. You know, when we have mining opportunities here, major corporations that want to set up here, then there's no excuse why we shouldn't have a first class healthcare system here then, right? All the investment here. So that's the first thing I would do, is to ensure that the parties that will be involved will have benefits, and that treaty and Aboriginal rights on traditional lands, you've dealt with that through Canadian craft paper and other agreements, that those are honored as well, and create jobs. That'd be exciting, jobs. So that's what I would do, is to consultation with all the public, with all the parties that will be involved, and that we all have a fair share in it. It's not right how Manitoba Hydro is reaping all the revenue and Cross Lake's right behind them with a long lineup to social assistance. It's not right, and that will not happen here. We will have a fair share in those resources that will be taken out.
Exciting times in the north, really exciting times. If anyone's been following the news, 1,100 new jobs up in Flin Flon. A new hotel just announced up in Flin Flon. I agree with Amanda. You don't often see two politicians agreeing, but we do agree on that part, that consultation with the First Nations community is important. Again, I referred to the agreement that was signed up with Marcel Colombe, and would certainly encourage companies to look at agreements such as that. But it also comes down to prosperity in our communities. And when you look at a community like Flin Flon, where can they draw employees from? And hopefully that we can encourage and we can train our local people using the Mining Academy up in Flin Flon, using UCN, for those mining jobs. And we have to start now. We have to start right now training people to fill those jobs. That is so important so that prosperity stays in the north. I get very upset when I see planes flying in from Quebec with workers that are working in Snow Lake. I get very upset when I see those dollars going out of the province. And I get very upset when I go to a community and I see a person who's 20-something, able-bodied, who's looking for a job and just can't get one. So we need to get those people who are looking for jobs, jobs. And the only way we're going to do that is by starting right at this minute and starting with UCN and the Mining Academy.
This is for both candidates. As you travel through the north, and as you know, I do a lot of traveling lately, you get to the 53rd parallel, and it's like cell towers end. You go north to the 55th parallel, and cell towers reappear. All the way through, and most of us here travel, is that we have a whole area that's not covered for any emergency services. We have emergency services being diminished in different communities. And what would you do to ensure that we have good traveling areas and cell towers in our area?
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I do a lot of traveling, so I know exactly what you mean. I was up in Cormorant last week, and I was amazed. They don't have cell coverage in Cormorant. And I said to them, I said, what happens if the power goes out and you need to get the RCMP or an ambulance in here? They said, well, somebody runs over to Clearwater and phones, and then the police come. And I said, like, that's third world. I mean, that's what it used to be like back in the 70s. It's not, that shouldn't be here. Same thing when you go down to Highway 60 and along 10. We all know that there's no cell coverage in those areas. And I would certainly encourage Bell to get cell towers up. I would also work with the feds. They've been talking about cell service for remote areas. In this case, I would consider us remote. We need cell towers in these areas. Gone are the days that I presume if we poll the audience here, everyone's got a cell phone in their pocket. Does anyone not have a cell phone in their pocket? They've got two over here. So gone are the days when we don't need cell coverage. We need cell coverage everywhere in our riding, everywhere. And as your MLA, I would certainly push for an increase on cell coverage.
So MTS used to be a crown corporation until the PCs privatized it. So imagine if it wasn't privatized, we can actually have a say. Why don't we have a cell tower here? How come our rates are so high? And that's why we're trying to protect Manitoba Hydro too, right? It's still a crown corporation. So this is why we're dealing with stuff like this. I go to Cormorant, I go to Moose Lake. I have to tell my chief of staff that I'm going to be off the radar. It became even more apparent during the pandemic. Moose Lake, they had to use walkie-talkies, in order to communicate during the pandemic. Same with Cormorant. Cormorant people said somebody had an accident out on the lake in the winter. If they had a cell phone, they wouldn't have suffered that much out there, right? It's all about safety. And like I said, this is what happens when we lose crown corporations. I think Heather Stephenson even had a share in it when it was sold. So what we would do is, like, we work with people that are actually like exploring it. They're the ones who are coming around, knocking on our doors and offering us little pieces of cell service or whatever, right? We have to deal with private companies now. So, lesson learned. Egose.
Good evening. So Recently, there's been a lot of investments into our education systems, into U of M and U of W, and up here at UCN, especially in trades. My question to you is, we are investing in education, so we're investing for seats for people to go and take the training, but we have a really high unemployment rate in Manitoba. So specifically here in the Pas, I think it was a year and a half ago, there were over 500 jobs available in our community, grade 12 level, but no takers. So a lot of businesses in our community and all over the north and across the province were in jeopardy. Michael's Corner Store was going to close, Tim Hortons. People are focusing on immigration. So we get the dollars for training, we get the seats, but we're not filling the seats and we're not getting the jobs filled. So where or what would your government's role be, or the messaging from your government, to keep kids in school and to get them to go out and find those jobs and fill positions?
Well, thank God we all worked together as a province and got rid of Bill 64. That would have messed up a lot of education, especially here in Manitoba. Bill 64, I'm so proud of all the Manitobans. I think there was over 300 or maybe 500 that signed up for committee to vote against Bill 64, which is a horrendous, mindless amendment to the Education Act. And also, too, I've seen with the pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs. And when the pandemic, when we were starting to lift restrictions, like you said, there was a lot of jobs available, but to no avail. And I always wondered, what happened to our people? Like, what happened to the store clerks? What happened to the servers at the restaurants? You know, well, they obviously learned from the pandemic, the first thing that goes are those types of jobs. So we're losing a lot of our people to different sectors for more long-term stable jobs, or even going back to school, right? So in order to address that, you know, we need to, I don't know we have employment centers. Why are they not connecting with our public? We have Fire Spirit. We have Manitoba Employment, where I used to work. We have other venues, support employment. Why are they not connecting with the public and recruiting? You know, that's why I think where our workforce is going. They went to more stable jobs, further their education, so that they don't get left out in the cold like they were during the pandemic.
I just want to give a big shout out to our hospitality workers. I know people that have been in the hospitality business for 40 years and made a career out of it and raised families out of it. So a big shout out to the hospitality workers. Darcy, I think the answer to that question is schooling. I really think that we have to start early in the school system and foster a spirit of entrepreneurship. I'm heartened by the Swan River School Division, where they run basically a business for their students. Those students come in, they've got a bank, they've got a corner store, they've got all these little businesses that they can go in and they can get experience. And then they can go out into the working world with that experience. Because just to get somebody off the street to run a cash register nowadays, they need computer skills. They need this, all sorts of skills, and they can't get it by using an Xbox. So I think that we really need to take a look at the high school and even the elementary schools and foster that spirit of entrepreneurship so that we can get more mom and pop businesses, and then of course from there we can get bigger businesses. I'm heartened to see a lot of our young adults who have left the community and who have now come back into the community and are starting businesses. There's more and more of those happening. And I think that's important, and we should really, I think that's up to maybe the chamber to celebrate those people that have come back and started a business. Our son is one of those. And there's several examples like that that have said, we're staying, we're coming back to our home communities, we're going to start a business, and we're going to make our life here. So into the schools and celebrate.
This will be the last audience question.
Thanks for the opportunity. Candidates really enjoyed some of the conversation tonight. Very good. I'd like to pitch something a little bit different. We're going to call this Dragon's Den. And we're going to say that this group sitting at this table are London-based bankers. And your task now is to explain to me how you're going to attract $100 million from these bankers to come and invest in the Port of Churchill and this community. That's your task.
Wow. Can I sit down for that one? Jim, you know, you take a look at the work that's been done by Arctic Gateway, your advocacy group, the Chamber of Commerce, UCN, the town, OCN, the arm of Kelsey. All the groups have worked together. I remember we went down to talk to a garment factory in Winnipeg about them coming up to the Pas and setting up a factory up here. And they said, why would we do that? And we went, a couple of reasons. Number one, we have UCN. I hate to go back to UCN all the time in every one of my answers, but I have to go back to UCN because they do the training. And we have a workforce also that can be trained by UCN. So those are the two reasons that you should come up. Secondly, you London-based bankers, you need to come up here because we have land. We have lots of land. And you need to come up here because our taxes are low and we have very cheap hydroelectricity. And that is number one. We have the greenest power in Canada, right here in Manitoba, and the cheapest power in Manitoba. So lots of benefits for coming up. We've got air coming in. We've got rail going both ways. You can go to Tidewater. We've got the clearest lake in the world, just at our doorstep. So come on up. We can train our people. You've got a willing workforce. And we've got clean, green energy.
I would probably start my presentation to especially the London-based bankers as to where I'm speaking from, Treaty 5 territory, if they remember. One thing I like about our community is that when you speak about mom and pop's businesses, we have a lot here. And they've been in business for a long time, which I find that it reads stability. It reads that businesses, a family can live here in the Pas in northern Manitoba for a long time and have a successful mom and pop's business. And if you look around town, there's many of those, and they're still here. Like, for example, the Grub Box, you know what I mean? A local business. Things that we're truly proud to support. And also the diversity that's coming into our town. You know, look at our population, how diverse it is. We got to incorporate technology. We got to be adaptive. Come to a Pas-Kameesak Cree Nation, Treaty 5 territory. Come and visit, what is it, the fourth clearest lake in the world. We will treat you to a fish fry. And the north is where my ancestors come from, a Pas-Kameesak Cree Nation. Something that I'm very proud of. And come to northern Manitoba. You got to be a bit tough to come from here and live here. And that's something I would promote. We're a tough, resilient population. We deal with a lot of have-nots. Come to us. Let's build business together. So this population doesn't have to be those have-nots. Help us. Help us grow. Help us adapt to technology that's coming up.
I'd like to say thanks to the audience for the questions. Thank you for the candidates for going through all the questions that we did. It was a lot. And now I want to offer you 2 minutes to do some closing statements and help me remember who started today. We're done with questions. Yeah. So there's going to be time after where you can actually talk to the candidates one-on-one. Yeah, you're welcome. So who started today? Okay. All right. So, Alan, if you want to give closing remarks, you have 2 minutes.
Again, thank you to the Chamber and UCN for putting this on today. I'm very proud of what the Progressive Conservative government has done in the past number of years. They've really, the thing that I'm most proud of is that they've listened to us in the North. And when you look at the Look North process, they came up here, they sat and talked to us. The people that ran it were from here. They went around the whole North and got the ideas. And then they put together a package that most governments would take a look at and say, you know what, we'll put that on the shelf because that looks like hard work. But our government did not do that. Not only did they take that and run with it, but they put money to it and hired people so that we could work on those 5 pillars. So I'm very proud of them for doing that because that has changed the North. I'm also proud of them because of another report that they did, and that's the Northern Tourism Strategy. So they went around and how do we increase tourism to Northern Manitoba? They produced a report, and then they put money towards that report. And we've increased tourism in Northern Manitoba unbelievably. We know a number of lodges. Of course, they threw money at this. Didn't throw it, put money at it. They hired me. I went out and worked. Shameless self-promotion here. But we worked, and there was lodges that were going to close for the winter in Northern Manitoba, and there was lodges that were going to close, period, that are now open 12 months of the year and have waiting lists. And that's what a good government does. It listens to the people that are affected by this and then deals with it. And I'm very proud of the PCs for doing that. You know me. You know what type of work I've done. I've been a mayor. I've been a police officer. I'm a husband, a grandfather, a teacher. I've been a strong advocate for 283, for the clinic, and for a number of other things. I built a boardwalk. You know what I can do, and I would appreciate your support come October the 3rd. Thank you.
We'll start the timer about 15 seconds after you start. We'll give you a little bit more time because we did for Alan.
Okay. Okay. My closing remarks are, I've been an NDP member since my dad told me to, since in my teenagers. And it puzzles me how a candidate who was described by CBC as a hardcore NDP member, Mr. Al McLaughlin, going from NDP to PC, well, we have the right to question. Why would somebody change their principles? I'm an NDP member until my final breath. And also, too, I've introduced bills as a mother. I've introduced legislation where when a child is sexually assaulted in Northern Manitoba, instead of being shipped out to Winnipeg and not being able to shower for 24 hours and go through their story numerous times, I fought hard for Bill 213 so that funding could be provided to nurses in Northern Manitoba so they can perform those actual examinations on children instead of adding further trauma. Now, I have to check in if the PCs actually honored my bill. I heard they haven't. And the other bill I introduced was 5 days paid leave for people who suffered a miscarriage or stillborn. That bill was kicked off the table by the PCs because they were more concerned about businesses losing money than us losing our children, and they kiboshed it and went 10 days unpaid leave. Doesn't apply to everyone.
30.
And also, too, don't be fooled by Heather Stephenson saying she's not Brian Pallister, because like what my dad said, be careful who you surround yourself with, because you will catch the fleas from the dogs you run with. Well, fleas, they still have those fleas, and that's advice I give to my children still to this day. Be careful who you surround yourself with. Heather Stephenson is not fooling us. She is still the Brian Pallister. She voted and backed up all these ridiculous and heartless and mindless policies. So don't trust that.
Thanks again to the candidates. We're about to wrap up, and I'll call on Jill to close us out.
Yes, I want to thank Amanda and Alan for coming and being under fire. It was, I thought that there was going to be not enough time for what we were going to do, but it ended up being that you got all the questions. Anyway, but I want to thank you and good luck to you both. And just a reminder that advance voting starts on Saturday, September 23rd to Saturday, September 30th. And then voting, the polls open on October 3rd. Thank you very much for everybody coming out.